I'll tell you. All righty, we are live. We are live. Well, good morning, Moira. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'm delighted that you're here. And I can't wait to see who joins us today in the Total Writing Enrichment Facebook Live show. And how are you doing? How are things in your neck of the woods? And tell us where you are logging on
Yes,
from.
I am logging on from Washington, D.C., where it is very gloomy today.
Mhm.
But it's great. I'm
Mhm.
just getting ready for my work day and
Yeah.
excited that we get to chat before I head into the office.
Awesome. Very cool. Very cool. Well, the topic for today is, and like I told you, most of the viewers on the Total Writing Enrichment Live show will click on a replay. And so I think something that I am going to try to also do is take notes and, post comments later and just kind of capture some of our topics. But Moira, you've done such a great job in working with teens and their writing and their critical thinking skills, and it's just been so much fun to collaborate with you and get your help so that Total Writing can serve more families. And I thought it would be really helpful today. We're still in January, although this is a long January. It's like going on, and the weather today
It
certainly
is.
doesn't help. But I thought it would be really helpful for you to highlight what you're seeing as far as some consistent like trouble spots with teens with their writing, um, and then end today's Facebook Live with given some of the common trouble spots with why can't I get an A in this English paper, or why don't I understand this literature, what you're seeing, some tips you have from like an amazing not only tutor point of view but an amazing writer point of view, so that when parents do watch this, they can share this with their teens. I mean, we're really looking to help. We're really looking to make life easier in this little niche of the world. But
Totally.
before we dive into your tips, will you share with their audience, like, just a snapshot? Your life has been quite interesting the past year, like where, talk about like where you graduated from and what your major was and why in the world you're taking the time to help these teens. I think that's an interesting one because I think there's a true
Yeah.
connection for you here. So give us a little intro.
Cool. So I am from Charlotte, North Carolina, which is how I know
Okay.
Amy. And way back when, in 2020, we started working together during the pandemic. And at that point, I was a sophomore in college, going into my junior year. And since then, I've graduated from Georgetown, where I studied government and journalism. And
Right.
now I am doing the thing and being a real time journalist. And I
Okay.
write business news from here in DC.
So exciting.
And I also tutor a whole lot of teens.
I know where we
um,
started with like, okay,
I
here's
think
one,
one.
maybe two, and then it's just really snowballed, which tells you
Mhm.
how much these critical thinking and writing
Yeah.
skills are needed. So thank
Yeah, and
you.
I
Thank you for that.
especially have an inside view of that. I'm the oldest of 4, so my 3 younger siblings, I still have one brother in high school, but I've
That's
kind
right.
of walked them through not only the high school English process, but, we've talked college admission essays, we've
Yeah.
talked college English,
Yeah.
and so especially during the pandemic, I got to see the high school experience and how
Right.
it was impacted by COVID. And I think now more than ever,
Now more than
just need
ever.
help sometimes, some support.
Right. Right. And, Moira, this is something for us to think about. Like, we've helped the teens who were directly affected. Perhaps they were in eighth grade, starting high school, a lot of them starting
Exactly.
college. But what about, I mean, this is a whole nother Facebook Live. What about younger students who were literally not in school, who were struggling to
Mhm.
stay connected to school during COVID, during those really formative years? Like, I'm talking third grade, right? So
Yeah.
third grade, yeah.
Yeah.
And so they're still coming through. So thank you, Moira, for all of your work with teens and with, giving your natural skills and leaning into, how you can help make this world a better place by tutoring so many total writing students. So I thought it would be so helpful today for you to share a little bit about, consistent issues you're seeing, problems, what would you say, like, is like, top one or two consistent obstacles that teens have, like, oh,
Mhm.
Moira, I'm so frustrated with this with my English class, or whether it's reading or writing or critical thinking. I mean, where are you like, wow, this is so interesting. I just tutored someone, and someone, two time slots later, they're having the same issue. Like, what would you say from your perspective?
Yeah, I think two things that I see a whole lot of are,
Okay.
one, there's not a lot of classroom teaching about how to stay organized. If you have a
Mm,
paper due in a week and there's no structure to that,
yeah.
why wouldn't you start the night before? You know what I mean? It's hard to
You're saying,
self-motivate
why
and
wouldn't
get
you start the
yourself to
night
start.
before from a teen's point of view?
Yeah, exactly. And we've all been there.
Yes.
But it's like, oh, shoot, I waited till the night before. I don't understand the prompt. I actually might not understand the reading, and I
Okay,
just
this
have
is
to throw something
huge.
together.
Okay,
So that's
that's
number
that's
one.
so big. Yeah, I get that. Just
Yeah.
before you,
And
I mean,
so,
that's like 3 things there, Moira. I mean,
yeah.
so this is so interesting. And when I taught freshmen, and I taught at, the high school where I taught, and I was
Mhm,
usually teaching the 2 highest levels. And here's the
mhm,
thing, probably like you at the time, a lot of these students were either or, both, naturally gifted at reading, really high, they got the reading comp, or they were really motivated to do well, right? Like,
yeah.
came from a very high performance area. But the thing was, in junior high, they could pull that off. They could pull off, right? So I would say
Yeah.
to even my freshmen, and here you have, sophomores and juniors, like, look, students, gone are the days of you getting an A in an
Mhm.
essay when you started at 10 o'clock the night before. And that's what yeah,
Yes.
that's
And
what I'm
I
hearing.
have
Yeah.
even, I try and be really honest with my students. And when I was in high school, there were many nights when I waited till the night before, and it did not work well for me.
Yeah. Okay, that's
And
good to
so I
hear. It didn't
think,
work well for you, and you're
no.
incredibly
And
gifted in the language arts. Mm.
yeah, as kind of
Mm.
two subsets of that, the other two really, really common mistakes and trouble points that I see are either not reading the prompt carefully
Mm.
and writing an essay that doesn't answer what the prompt is asking, or reading the prompt and not taking the time to understand it.
Okay.
Um, and then the other thing, and this kind of goes back to the organization, but not taking the time to plan your essay,
Mm.
which I think just completely changes the game. And I've seen it completely change a student's essay
Totally.
and the grade that they're getting on their essays before.
Yeah.
Um, and, I didn't do that in high school. And when I got to college, I tried to write essays without doing that. And as soon as I started outlining and taking the time to prepare an
Mm.
essay, I mean, it was a 360 turnaround. My grades
That's so
were
interesting. Right.
drastically higher. So,
Okay. Okay. So, and that's a good question. When do you feel like you did really lean into this epiphany, like, okay, and I'm in a humble way. I do have these
yeah,
skills. I'm like thinking of you more. I have always loved to read. However, the buck stops here. I need to take the time to understand
yeah,
the prompt, to understand this is what the teacher, professor. I mean, was that in college, or when did that happen? Did it start to
it
happen in your latter years of high school, do you
I
think?
think
Or
it started to happen later in high school, but it really didn't click for me until college. And I just think I would have had such an easier experience if I had started, when I was a freshman, sophomore, junior in high school.
I
And
do
I think
too.
that's something that I talk to my students a lot about is this is a habit. And if you start building this habit now, not
Yes.
only will your high school essay grades and your high school English grades improve, but you'll have better success in your college admission essays. You
Right,
will be
right.
prepared for the college classes that you have to take. And in college, you're not just writing English essays, you're writing
Mm.
essays in just about every class. I mean, you'd be surprised.
Mhm.
You could write a math essay, they will
Right,
find a way to make it
right.
happen. So
Yeah, yeah, I love
these
it,
are really
love it, yeah.
universal skills.
Mhm. Yeah,
And I think it's hard to think long term when you're 16 or
it is hard to
17.
think long term, and I
I
think what you tapped into
remember
about the habits is huge. Yeah, go ahead.
mhm. So I mean, I remember being 16 or 17, and that's another thing that I stress to my students a lot is I like to think I'm not old yet. I'm
Yeah,
22 and I was
yes,
just in school,
yeah.
so I get it. and
Yeah,
it's
you do
hard,
get it, right, which is one reason
but
I
it
think
pays
that you
off.
make, one among many, Moira, that you do such an incredible job with these kids because once you have these habits, like, why wouldn't you brush your teeth, right?
Mhm.
It's almost
Exactly.
like, why wouldn't you understand the essay prompt before spending an hour
Mhm.
writing it? Why wouldn't you make
Mhm.
sure that actually your interpretation of Macbeth is in the ballpark correct, and it even relates to what the professor, the teacher wants, but
Right.
you get why a lot of students wouldn't. You've
Mhm.
recently been there. But what I
Yes.
think the big difference is perhaps for you, that gap between, okay, maybe you realize you weren't there and what you have to do to get there is smaller than a lot of the
Mhm.
students who have not had the essay prompts, who have not had the feedback, who don't have the natural language arts gifts that you do. So thank you again for all of your
Exactly.
amazing work you
Yeah.
do with these students. I can see how it works so well. I can see how it works so well. So I've gone ahead and for people hopping on now or watching this on the replay, I've put in the top 3 common mistakes that you're seeing more when working with students with writing essays and really backing up. I mean, what you've said so far is a lot of pre-writing. It's a lot of
Yeah, I
pre-writing
think
work, pre-writing time. Yeah.
it's hard to see the positive outcome. It's hard to incentivize this for yourself. But as
Yeah.
someone who has gone through high school, gone through college, I write all day for my job. I
Yes.
have the benefit of, okay, I've not had this habit. I've done it without the habit. I've developed
Yeah.
the habit, and then I've seen the payoff. And
Yeah. Yeah.
I can speak to the payoff and it's totally worth it.
Totally.
The extra 20, 30 minutes that it
I
takes to
mean,
bullet point and outline,
right.
to underline and highlight a prompt. So worth
Right.
it.
So really what I'm hearing from you, Moira, and I love this, is it's a lot of people when they hear like writing, tutoring, think like, okay, proofread. I have so many parents say, like, Amy, I just never grasped punctuation, grammar and punctuation. And I'll tell my son, I think that's where the comma should be. And you and I are both like, okay, that's such a small, teeny tiny. We might not even talk about where the
Yeah.
comma should be.
Yeah.
It's that critical thinking, and it's forming these habits that naturally
Mhm.
lead to the kids proofreading, the kids knowing where those commas should
Exactly.
be. But we can't even get to that. That's like the icing on the cake. I always tell students,
Mhm.
especially with these college essays.
Right.
It's like we have to think of what are the ingredients for the cake, and what I'm hearing from you is right now the ingredients are even developing these habits. So I think that
Mhm.
goes such a long way more, not just for like the paper at hand for what's due
Right.
the next day or hopefully in 2 weeks,
Mhm.
right,
Yeah.
but what's due like half a year from now.
And what's
Hmm.
really awesome too is with my students, we focus a lot on habit building, and we are now a little over halfway through the school year, and I'm starting to see these habits.
Mm,
Students are doing
mm.
things on their own. It's
Oh, that's
just
awesome.
they come to me with an
Yeah.
outline, or
I
they
was just
say,
going to
I'm
say,
going to
can you
send
think of
you
a specific example?
I'm going to
Yeah.
send you my thesis. I'm going to send you my outline days before
Yeah.
my paper
Right.
is due.
Right.
And then once we get through those steps and we've looked at the outline and we've talked about the prompt, and then we go back and say, okay, where can we add a comma? And
Right.
is your spelling correct?
Right.
Do
Yeah.
you have the
Yeah.
right words capitalized?
Right.
But
Right.
more important than all of that, that
Yeah.
takes us 5 or 10 minutes.
Yeah.
More important is the front loading, the work.
Absolutely. And I think that's huge. And I think that we could create, like, there's a lot we could take a deeper dive into here. But so many
Mhm.
kids and parents think it's just like, I'll say to students, like, okay, so what does good writing mean to you? Right. And
Yeah.
actually, there was an article that was just the people that post my social media just posted this article on how I got my start. So way back in Illinois, and one
Mhm.
quote that they lifted on this social media post from this long article was, what intrigued me, and it still does, is when I'll say to a new parent or a new teen, like, so what does good writing mean to you? What they immediately say is like, oh, well, using like really fancy words. And they always say the comma, knowing where to put the comma. And and some of the most, there's a bestsellers out there with like not very, really
Yeah.
basic words, but
Mhm.
there's such depth of content and beautiful organization, and a
Exactly.
lot of that comes in the front loading, the pre-writing. Okay, very good. Well,
Exactly.
I thank you so much, and so, you know, I know you could probably give like 27 really easy tips, like low-hanging fruits that if so many teens listen to right now, they would elevate and boost and improve their writing. So, what I'm going to ask you is, we've called out and I've captured in the comments here, these three common
Mhm.
mistakes, right? And I know there are
Mhm.
more, but lack of organization, time management leads to a low grade in an essay, failure to understand the essay prompt, and then failure to write an outline and to really plan,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
So, what would you say? Let's say there's a parent out here, watching this on a replay, and this is really speaking to them. And how can they help their kids get started with, like, flipping some of these mistakes? Like, so many
Mhm.
moms I know are like, to, let's say their sons or their daughters, like, you're just not organized. Take the
Yeah.
time to write an outline. But like, how do you do that? That's like someone coming to me, I love to run for a long, long time and to swim, although I pride myself on being one of the slowest ones of my master's swim team. But that's like someone saying, Amy, I just have a lack of energy because I have a lot of energy. And I just am really unhealthy. And I wish I was in shape. And I'd say to them, well, just come jump in the pool and swim for an hour and 15 minutes with me. And it's like, but how can you, like, what little bitty tip, like, how do you start with students? Because there's a lot of, I say to
Yeah.
parents a lot of times, like, it's like the gears need to, get into place. Like,
Mhm.
how do you click off a call with a student and they're like, huh, okay, I can do that. I know I'm not going to
Yeah.
get an A in this next essay, but I can take one little step and it can be easier. Like, what's one
Yeah.
little thing they can hold on to?
So, something that I love and encourage my students to do, and this is kind of a double dipper. So, I
Okay.
think annotating the prompt that you get the
Mm.
same way you would annotate a
Oh,
text that you're reading is huge.
I
And
love
I
that.
started doing this on exams, like the ACT, AP exams, because especially when
Oh,
you're writing under a time constraint,
yeah,
you need to take time to understand the prompt. And I did it in
right.
college, but I think this is a
Hmm,
way to understand the prompt, and it's like a pseudo outline too. If you
right.
take the prompt,
Yeah,
maybe you make up your own system and you're going to highlight the question that
yeah,
you're asking,
right,
and
right.
you're going to circle the context that it's asking
Mhm,
for.
mhm,
And
mhm.
then, I mean, if you looked at any of the exams I took in college,
Yeah,
on the piece of paper with the prompt, it
yeah.
would look like a nuclear weapon plan. I'm not kidding. Like arrows flying all over the place.
Yes.
You don't even
Oh, I
have to
love
make
this.
a separate outline, you
Yeah,
know, jot down 3 words like,
right,
"Yes, I think this is right," or, "The character did XYZ." Just give yourself
right,
little notes. No one else even needs to understand it. Your
right.
handwriting can be sloppy. It
Okay, this
cannot
is
be a full
so
sentence.
brilliant, Moira. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So if you're hopping on now, if you watch the replay, so Moira and I've been talking about common mistakes we see with teens, with their frustration, with their writing, with a lack of pre-writing, which is a lot of steps. And right now, Moira was talking about, okay, what's one little bitty step? What's one tip that parents right now you can share with your teens to hang on to not only make essay writing easier, but to get ultimately, hopefully, a better grade. And you're saying to annotate the actual essay prompt. I think that's
Mhm.
brilliant. I love that. And it gives kids such a sense of control because here's what they do, don't you think? They read this essay prompt and they're like, and their head starts spinning, like thinking about
Yes.
the novel, like Catcher in the Rye or Macbeth or Romeo and Juliet or the Odyssey. But it's like, no, no, no,
Mhm.
bring it back to that prompt. And yours, what I'm hearing from you
Exactly.
is this also relates to the SAT, right? The like
You
really
can I
analyzing the
mean,
questions.
I've done this on countless exams, essays,
Yeah.
assignments. Sometimes I will even do this for, a story that I'm writing at work, which doesn't even
Right,
have a prompt, but I will just write the topic and bullet point everything that I know about it and what I need to get out.
right, right,
And so, it takes the pressure off having to write an outline and how are you going to do that? How are you going
I
to find the
agree.
time? it's right there on the paper already, and
Totally.
you're just getting your thoughts out.
You're just getting your thoughts out. Okay, that's really wonderful. Like, I think that's like a lot. Like, I don't even think you have to say any more. And I know you have
Yeah.
like 25 more, but here's what's so interesting to me. So over the break, I've had a number of parents of college students who are placed in like, really competitive admissions rate colleges saying, Amy, my son, my daughter, I don't know how they got A's in English. And now professors are really calling them out on weak
Hard.
writing. Like they are getting like C minuses, like D pluses, like
Mhm.
see me underscore 2 times. And these poor kids are like, oh, I got an A in high school. I mean, Moira, this is what it was like for me teaching high school freshmen saying, they'd say, Miss Haskell, I always got an A in 7th and 8th grade writing. And then they boom, hit this difficult, writing curriculum where I used to teach. So this helps so much. Like annotate,
Mhm.
which is the fancy word for taking notes,
Yes.
annotate the actual prompt. What does this mean to
Yeah,
you? What do you not understand? Start to
exactly.
create your own mini outline without it having to be this
Mhm.
like Roman numeral one. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
fabulous,
and I
Moira.
can
I
tell
love
you
that.
too, when I was a similar story to what you're just saying, when I was a junior in high school, and
Yeah,
if any of my students are watching this, you've heard this story because I tell it to everybody. I was in AP
lovely.
English. I was like, "Oh, this is gonna be a breeze." I turned in my summer reading essay, C minus, and I was like, "Wait a minute. This is 4 pages of poetry. It's
Right.
beautiful."
Yeah.
I answered the wrong prompt. I didn't write what the prompt was asking for.
Mhm.
And ever since that day,
Yes.
I
Yes.
analyze the prompt just like it is a book or the text that I'm writing
I
about.
love that. So it
Um,
was of the gift of the teacher calling you out. I mean, it was
yes,
that teacher giving you that C or that C minus. And I have
exactly.
similar stories with my own students. Yeah.
Mhm.
So oftentimes, and I tell this to my own kids, and I know we're going to wrap this up in a couple of minutes here. I love the phrase, there is no failure. It's only life lessons. So now I
Yes.
know, a lot of parents who will watch this will say, like, but Amy, my daughter's teacher gives no feedback and doesn't explain how to get to the expectations that she wants. That's why we're here, right? And that's a
Mhm.
whole nother. I mean, if you have a
Totally
teacher,
different.
I have a couple of students right now at really what are known to be great high schools who are like, Miss Haskell, I wouldn't give myself an A in this essay. Like,
Yeah.
and this teacher is giving me an A. Give me feedback. Help me. Give
Yes,
me the C
yes.
minus, Mrs. Haskell. Yeah. So I think there are a lot of issues here, Moira, and some people sadly say a lot of, schools right now is just a failed system. And we're here because we believe in, the power of words and the power of learning how
Yeah.
to, you know, critically express and thoughtfully express your ideas. Well, is there any last, and I know there probably is, tidbit of advice or technique or strategy that you wanted to share
Mhm.
before we wrap it up here today?
Yeah, I think my last piece of advice is that writing is not just for English class, and as someone who just graduated college, I can tell you every single class I took had some layer of writing in it, so these skills that you're building now, I
Yes,
encourage you to think beyond 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th grade
yes,
English class
exactly.
because
Yeah,
they are lifelong skills, and I have friends
life.
who even work in banking or um, science professions who work in research labs now who are, I don't know how to write an email. I don't know how to write. I don't know how to
Absolutely.
write. So these are lifelong skills
I think
and
so.
we
I
need them
think so.
forever.
Right. I think so. And I even think that, Moira, um, we could come up with like a quick small group class as far as
Totally.
emailing professors, right? And
Yeah.
so I know, yeah, how to communicate your point across, or your college advisor. What is the main
Right.
point? Is there a problem? Like clear, short. I think that would be, a wonderful opportunity and a lot of fun too. Well, thank you for all of your hard work and your enthusiasm and how you truly help so many of the teens that that are connected to total writing enrichment, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate you. So thank you, Moira. And parents who are watching, and I know a lot of you watch on the replay, please say hello. Please let us know what you gleaned from our show today. We have written out some of the tips for you, and I know a lot of parents want so badly. I know you want your teens to not just get an A in English, not just get into the college of your dreams, but learn how to clearly express and communicate your thoughts through the written word, and learn how to better enjoy reading, because these are all lifelong gifts. So if any of you want to reach out to me, I'm here on Facebook, and you know where to reach me at totalwritingenrichment.com, and there's a form you can fill out. And right now we are taking a lot of calls for parents of juniors for upcoming college admissions essays. So get in there. I do think we will fill up quickly this year, and we will have a waiting list. So would love to talk to you. And thank you again, Moira. And we'll see everyone soon. Bye-bye.